أنا بدي أنتقل معكم هلأ للزميل الأكثر العزيز والمتواجد دائما بمعهد الدراسات العربية والشرقية بجامعة إكستر، دكتور أليساندرو كولومبو. دكتور أليساندرو رح يحكي لنا اليوم عن Decolonizing Arabic Language Teaching in Higher Education Sector. دكتور أليساندرو معنا اليوم من جامعة ويستمنستر، حاصل على شهادة دكتوراه من جامعة إدنبرا، وكان طبعا دارس من قبل بجامعة سواس، وكمان ماجستير ودرجة الإجازة باللغة العربية واللغات بشكل عام من جامعة بولونيا بإيطاليا. الميكروفون لك دكتور أليساندرو، تفضل.
شكرا صفاء. نسيتي تذكري اني درست بالشام كمان.
لا هي مشان ما تكون شهادتي كثير مجروحة بعدين.
من أهم التجارب. ممكن أعمل فرجيكم البرزنتيشن.
شكرا.
شايفين الشاشة؟
شايفين.
تمام، شكرا كثير. شكرا للي نظموا هالمؤتمر. أنا هذه ثاني مرة أحضر هالمؤتمر، للأسف هالمرة ما قدرت أحضر كل كل يوم. يعني امبارح كمان كان عندي صفوف امتحانات، واليوم لحقت بس أقدم هالبرزنتيشن وبس. ما عندي وقت لأسمع كل التقديمات ولأتعلم، يعني لأنه هو هالمؤتمر فرصة دائما لأتعلم شغلات جديدة. اليوم حبيت أنا أطرح يعني موضوع جديد، وموضوع لسه بدايته، يعني خلينا نقول، لأنه العنوان مثل ما عم تشوفوا هو Decolonizing Arabic Language Teaching. يعني موضوع الديكولونايزيشن فينا نقول إنه يمكن ما في له تحرير، ما في له ترجمة باللغة العربية. أكيد decolonization في له ترجمة تحرير من الاستعمار، ولكن كمفهوم يعني ومفهوم عم ينتشر بالجامعات كثير، ومو بس بالجامعات. يعني بركي ما في له ترجمة معينة. decolonizing in higher education طبعا يعني بالجامعات وهيك، يعني تخلص من أسلوب تعليمي وباحثي وأكاديمي تأثر بالاستعمار كتجربة أوروبية وغير أوروبية بالعالم بالقرن التاسع عشر والثامن عشر طبعا كمان عارف. طبعا بعتقد انه هذا الموضوع ممكن نحن كأساتذة لغة عربية ممكن نتعلم منه، لانه هو موجة، خلينا نقول it's a wave in higher education that's affecting a variety of fields. يعني كثير مجالات عم تتأثر بفكرة الديكولونايزيشن. فخطر على بالي انه ممكن نحن كمان كأساتذة لغة عربية فينا نغير، يعني يمكننا أن نغير أسلوبنا بالتدريس، أو نفكر، ليس بالضرورة نغير الأسلوب، أو نفكر بطريقة مختلفة عندما نقوم بانتقاء المواد، عندما ندخل الصف ونختار اللغة التي نتكلم بها مع الطلاب. بعرف انه كوكتيل فصحى سوري انجليزي، بس طولوا بالكم عليه شوي. هلا مشان ننتقل للصفحه الثانيه. اوكي، الsymbolic power of language. انا I take this kind of idea من مريم أبو العز، بس كمان من ياسر سليمان. As you can see, I mean, the discourse is a lot more broad than just language teaching. هن شو بيقولوا that language serves as an effective means of communication, of course. يعني اللغة هي وسيلة للتخاطب وللتواصل، بس مو بس هيك، هي مو بس وسيلة للتخاطب وللتواصل والكلام. هي it has a symbolic function. يعني that includes, of course, it says the capacity of a language to act as a symbol, but also as an index. وهذا الشيء أول نقطة خلتني أنا أفكر بهالموضوع. يعني لما ندرس اللغة العربية، ندرس لغة هي لها أهمية بأكثر من مجال أكيد مثل كل اللغات، بس لها أهمية أيديولوجية كمان، يعني بما يتعلق بالأيديولوجية. يعني أسلوب التدريس كمان هو بيتأثر بطريقة التفكير، وبيتأثر كمان ببعض الأيديولوجيات، وبيتأثر كمان بطريقة تفكيرنا بهالمنطقة. خلينا نقول الشرق الأوسط، ما بنحب هالكلمة، خلينا نقول العالم العربي مثل ما بدكم. But this is the first hint. So it includes Maryam Abul Aziz and Yasser Suleiman. They say it includes also the role of the language as a proxy to express extra linguistic views and anxieties, as well as to hint at the political orientations of a group or individual. Every time we decide to teach something, every time we use a certain word as opposed to another one, every time we organize materials and we present them to students, we are in a way or another expressing a political orientation. Our political orientation as individuals, as teachers, or the political orientation or a group, or if you want, of a nation in general, or of a group of countries. طبعا كمان هون يعني مو ممكن نقول لغة وسياسة، ما بتصور انه هدول الكلمتين بيترجموا language and politics، بس ممكن نقول يعني العلاقة بين التراث الثقافي والعقائد الأيديولوجيا. Because, and again, borrowing from Silverstein here, in other words, at the symbolic level, language serves as a proxy for ideology. I said that concept for language ideology links the instrumental and the symbolic functions of language, in that the symbolic can be used to justify the instrumental. Silverstein defines language ideology as a set of beliefs about language articulated by users as a rationalization or justification of perceived language structures in use. So as of when we say language ideology, we mean a situation where the language becomes politicized, and I'm afraid Arabic is extremely politicized. One may argue that all languages are politicized. I think Arabic is a bit more politicized than the other, and this is, I think, the product of a tradition, the product of a way in which Arabic has been taught. Also, and when it is used as a proxy to maintain or challenge power relations, group identity, and a social order in society. These are extremely, I think, important concepts to start this discussion about decolonizing Arabic language teaching. We need to keep these things in mind. I think they're very significant statements, in that perhaps every time, again, as I said, every time we enter the classroom, we prepare something, we may not be aware of the importance or the role that language can play at this level, at the ideological level. So this presentation, like I said, is not necessarily about the ideology of a certain approach to the Arabic language, but in a vacuum. It is about ideology in a certain context. So I argue that understanding the complex relationship between language and politics in the field of Arabic language teaching can shed light on some deep-seated political dogmas in the Western approach to the Arabic language, broadly speaking, both as a medium as well as a symbol, which is again drawing again on Yasser Suleiman and Maryam Abul Aziz. These are the kind of concepts that I have in mind when I'm thinking of decolonizing Arabic language teaching and why it's important. My aim here is to raise questions rather than provide answers, to initiate a debate, which I won't have time. I doubt that we will have time to discuss in great detail because of the limitations of time. But there will be, I hope, more opportunities to discuss this. One of them will probably be the Christmas conference this year, at which we will have a jalsat niqash, a group discussion about this. So as I said, my aim is to raise question on the important symbolic role that Arabic language course books have played, especially the ones designed in the United States, have played in shaping the profile of Arabic language graduates, as well as in many ways the future of our field, or at least the challenges that lay ahead. In addition, my aim is to draw on an increasingly widespread approach to research teaching. Again, as I said, to propose a decolonization of Arabic language teaching. What do I mean by decolonization? It's a very broad concept, if we like. It's been applied, as I said, not only in higher education, but also in a variety of other fields. It's an approach to liberation from a colonial approach to knowledge, which I am afraid does still exist, as avoiding and resisting the perpetuation of colonial and neo-colonial practices, as well as recognizing and surpassing the living legacy of the colonial mindset, particularly with regards to the Arab Muslim universe. Of course, نحن أساتذة لغة عربية، فهذا الموضوع هو مرتبط بعلاقتنا بالبلاد العربية. مثل ما قلت لكم، في ناس ما بتحب كلمة الشرق الأوسط، ناس ما بتحب كلمة العالم العربي، ما في داعي نستخدم ولا واحدة من هدول، بس نحن فهمنا على شو عم نأشر. هذا الموضوع كمان فكرت فيه انه هو كمان مرتبط بموضوع المسؤولية. يعني شو هي مسؤوليتنا كأساتذة لغة عربية؟ من شي شهر تقريبا عملت ورشة مع مؤسسة كارا مع أساتذة درسوا اللغة العربية بتركيا، وناقشنا هذا الموضوع. ما هي مسؤوليتنا؟ ما مسؤوليتنا كأساتذة لغة عربية؟ والأجوبة كانت مسؤوليتنا أنه ندرس منيح، أنه نعطيهم للطلاب مواد جيدة، مواد مثيرة للاهتمام إلى آخره. بس أنا بتصور أنه مسؤوليتنا أكبر من هيك. يعني مسؤوليتنا كبيرة كتير، لأنه نحن كأساتذة لغة عربية نعرف الطلاب مرات لأول مرة للغة العربية، نعرف الطلاب لأول مرة للثقافة العربية، أو كمان أو بعض الأمور المرتبطة بدين الإسلام. So I think that you know, even though, as I said, this relationship between ideology and language, or the symbolic role of language, can be applied to a variety of languages, probably to all languages in the world. All languages have a, you know, when we speak them, they convey a certain worldview, but its application to Arabic seems particularly significant. We play a crucial role as teachers, and we have a responsibility in this sense. And I think the importance of our role is that of developing empathy, as well as a good understanding of the nuances of a different culture. And this responsibility can hardly be overstated. That's why perpetuating a colonial worldview, or neo-colonial, if you want, neo-colonial practices is somehow dangerous. It's not something I wish to engage with, to engage in. In addition, I think it's important also to point out something which we may not think of when we think of Arabic language teaching, but the unended military campaigns of the United States of America and its allies against Arabs and Muslims more generally, as well as their undiminished and vital role in perpetuating the disgraceful situation in Palestine, have contributed to crystallize, on one hand, the hegemonic role of a Eurocentric American view on Arabic-speaking countries, and their subordinate role on a global scale on the other. What is the perception of Arabic and Arabic speakers that we are dealing with? What is the perception of Arabs and Arabic speakers that we may challenge as Arabic teachers? What is the perception that we may as well create as Arabic teachers, not necessarily challenge or change? We need, I think these are some of the things that we need to keep in mind. This responsibility, at least I feel it. I feel a huge responsibility when I get 19-year-olds walking into my classroom as first year students, you know, curious to learn Arabic. I am aware of the impact that my teaching will have. I'm aware and concerned in a bit of the impact that my teaching will have, and the things that I teach them, how they will shape their perception of this world. Will they contribute to perpetuate this situation? Will they contribute to perpetuate a situation where Islamophobia is rampant, which it is, or racism? It's some of the things that I keep in mind. Language teaching is great, and I love it, and I love doing it. But you know, these are some of the concerns that have kind of pushed me to engage with decolonization as a movement and to try to apply it to my field. طيب لا خلينا نرجع ورا. تمام. So the first أول حافز هو أول شيء خلاني أنا أفكر بهالموضوع. يعني ما أتذكر أيمت بالضبط، كنت واقف بشيء قاعة مدري بأي جامعة عم سمع الطلاب شيء. أنا asked myself، يعني عم بقول لحالي أنا ليش هون؟ أنا ليش واقف هون قدام هدول الطلاب وعم بعلمهم اللغة العربية؟ It's I think the number one question that has let me engage with this subject, that has made me engage with the subject of decolonizing Arabic language teaching. Of course, all of us have different reasons. And again, مثل ما قلت لكم بهالورشة اللي عملتها مع مؤسسة كارا الشهر الماضي بتركيا، سألت نفس السؤال. كانت ورشة عن تدريس اللغة العربية. لماذا ندرس اللغة العربية؟ يعني ليش؟ في داعي نحن ندرس اللغة العربية؟ وطبعا كل واحد ممكن يقول أنا بدرس اللغة العربية مثلا لأنه بدي أخلي الطلاب يحكوا لغة عربية. Because this is what students want. Enabling students to speak Arabic. We want to teach the students how to use this language, mostly to respond to their need. يعني they want to speak Arabic. ببساطة كتبت they want to speak Arabic بالعامي خلينا نقول. This is what they want, right? They want to speak Arabic. So this is the first, perhaps, thing that we should keep in mind. They want to speak Arabic. Okay, good. Some other people could say students' employability, which I'm not necessarily against. Why should one be against? Students are learning this language because they want to find a job, and they can sell this skill in the job market. They can say, I speak Arabic, I want to sell the skill. Personally, if I may, I left my answer, my personal answer, to the end is that of enhancing an intercultural understanding. So elicit a genuine enthusiasm and a fruitful interest in a rich, fascinating tradition, in the language, of course, itself, but also in everything that's around it. Okay, so history, religion, culture, adab, literature, and so on and so forth. Also to open the students' minds, as well as doors for them. Again, I'm not against the concept of employability. You learn Arabic because you want to find a job. That's perfect. What job, however? What are the career paths that we're preparing for these students? And is Arabic a language that prepares students specifically to certain career paths? Unlike any other language, except perhaps for Chinese. Arabic and Chinese, I've discovered by talking to some colleagues that have Arabic language teaching and Chinese language teaching have a lot in common. They seem somehow to prepare students to specific career paths. Whereas when someone learns German or Greek, they're not necessarily thinking of working for a specific or in a specific field. So my argument here is that the majority, I would say, the vast majority of the books available and of the books, particularly the ones designed in the United States, there's a huge focus on passive rather than active skills in these textbooks, which do not activate speaking. So we're already, I think, losing the opportunity to respond to the first or to kind of achieve our first goal, which is that of letting students speak this language. This is what they want. This is what we want as teacher. Because most of these books, what they focus on is passive skills. Understanding Arabic much more than actually, articulating their thoughts in Arabic as much as they can. They don't have to talk about foreign policy in Arabic. They can talk about everyday things, but these skills, for some reason, are not activated. Most exercises are designed to enhance the students' passive understanding of the language in specific fields, which is what I'll address in the next slide, inshallah, rather than their capacity to articulate their thoughts. The content proposed does not seem to consider Arabic a language of interaction. يعني اللغة العربية هي مو لغة تخاطب، مو لغة الناس يحكوا فيها كل يوم وبيقولوا كيفك شو أخبارك وين رايح وين لا هي it's a language for listening and for understanding. So the various units focus on monologues rather than dialogues. There's a huge presence of monologues for some reason. There's very few dialogues in most of these course books. Students don't receive an exposure to language in context. This is a huge skill that this is a very important skill that they do not develop, the capacity to speak to one another. Also, from a very early stage, the books focus more on variation. There's a huge focus on how very simple words such as ما بعرف كل or كل or كل are pronounced in different varieties of Arabic, or kuntu versus kunt, Egyptian versus Syrian Ammiya, from a very early stage. And only in Arabic, I have to say, and perhaps in Chinese, that this kind of desire to show students this diversity, which does exist, and it's the richness of the language, and it's the beauty of Arabic, in my opinion. These different varieties that do exist. I don't understand why the focus on variation, rather than showing the commonalities that exist between the different varieties, and that even though there are varieties, they're the same language at the end of the day, even though we recognize the various differences. This, I think, complicates the students' understandings of diglossia and how Fusha and Ammiya work, if we can still speak of Fusha and Ammiya in 2021, but this is for another conference. Okay, in addition to the absence of these dialogues, the choice of vocabulary in the first units is designed to allow students to develop an understanding of current affairs and direct them towards specific career paths. Again, this is something I've seen in no other language book. No other course book for other languages. No other course book, in no other language you will see in the very first units, ما رأيك في السياسة الاقتصادية للحكومة العراقية? Never you would see this. It makes very little sense, except that you want to direct students towards specific career paths. What I was saying about variations is something like this. Imagine that you're learning English in your 5th week, back in the day when I was still learning English, which is not my first language, and people would, imagine if my teacher showed me this, how British and American pronunciation differ from one another, which is a reality. English is also a language which has, huge diversity of accents and pronunciations, but it's not something that it's addressed at a very early stage. And if people want to learn, this variety of lahjat and ammiyat that exist in English, they can go do it themselves. For some reason with Arabic, there's a focus on this, on variation, rather than on the unity of the Arabic language. So I just wanted to show this picture just to say, imagine if when we were learning English, in week 3 or week 4, they showed you this. It said leisure, it's pronounced leisure in Britain and leisure in the United States. I don't think that would have made a lot of sense. Also, what I said about employability, if we think employability is our goal as teachers, which is a perfectly legitimate goal, are we actually opening doors for students? Or are we limiting the choices? Are we limiting the career paths that students can then, choose and they can successfully enter in the job market? I think that this approach to the language, as not necessarily appropriate for communication, made of monologues with little dialogues where understanding and passive skills are more important than active skills, is consistent with the career paths that this approach to the language push students to. News editor, for example, with sophisticated and outdated vocabulary such as Rais al-Wuzara, Wazir al-Kharijiyya, Midri Shu, introducing students to news agencies, very short articles from a very early stage. Unit 5, Unit 6 in these books, you will see that students have to be able to read the news. And Hosni Mubarak ذهب إلى مدري وين راح ورجع والتقى بالوزير واستعرضا القضايا في المنطقة. I think we were limiting the choices for students. We're not opening doors for them. We're not opening our minds, but we're not even opening doors when it comes to, allowing them to enter the job market and sell this skill. And this is also a perpetuation of a situation where the Middle East is the place of news, breaking news. Just like Karl Scharo, the comedian, said, God created the Middle East and said, let there be breaking news. Because this is what we hear, as if other countries didn't have current affairs and other things. This is like something specific to Arabic. Another career path is probably political analyst. This is evident in the vocabulary list, as I said, from a very early stage. You have terms such as al-Umam al-Muttahida, al-Jaysh, as I said, السياسة الاقتصادية للحكومة العراقية, and so on and so forth. Or perhaps work in global organizations such as al-Umam al-Muttahida, as I said. In this sense, positionality is also important because these things take place in the United States, of course, not in the Arab world. Again, forgive me for using this term. Is this what we want? Is this what our students want? Is this, when we say, again, we go back to the question, ليش ندرس لغة عربية? Is this the reason why we teach Arabic? ما بتصور، أنا شخصيا ما بتصور. ما في وقت كتير بعرف، وهذه آخر شيء، آخر سلايد رح أفرجيكم إياها. I don't think this situation is allowing teachers and students to achieve their goals as learners and educators. Both we as educators with those goals that I maybe imagined, but I think, you know, they're representative of what most people would say in answer to the question, why do you teach Arabic? But also the students, why are these students learning Arabic? For a variety of reasons, or perhaps for no reason. Perhaps for no particular reason. أنا شخصيا, I didn't have a specific goal when I decided to learn Arabic. I just wanted to learn a new language. And you know, thinking outside the box. أنا سرقت هالعبارة من ليلى. I don't know if she's here. I didn't manage to attend her محاضرة this morning. But thinking outside the books, the existing books, is, in my opinion, she played with thinking outside the box, thinking outside the books. Thinking outside the books is, in my opinion, the only way forward. So relying on textbooks with specific political agendas can only result in a situation where our goals and ambitions as educators and learners are hampered. It's like perpetuating a specific agenda which was imagined and designed and negotiated and put together somewhere else, not in our hearts, not in our specific departments. I think there's a need to rethink the relationship between teach materials and our role, our ambitions, also specific personal ambitions, and our responsibilities as teachers. So, صفاء ممكن تسامحيني إذا أنا طولت عليكم كتير، بس ممكن نوقف هون.
شكرا كثير لك أليساندرو. طبعا التعليقات كثير ممتعة الصراحة. شكرا كثير لك لهذا التقديم الممتع. إذا في أي سؤال، بما أنه نحن تجاوزنا الوقت ب5 دقائق تقريبا، فرح نحاول نبعث لك الأسئلة بحيث إذا تقدر تجاوب عليها من خلال الشات بعد البريك.